Hey guys, it's Jessica. Welcome to the Library Dispatch, my weekly reading update. And this week I have so many amazing books to talk about. I completed 3 books. We have some political fantasy that really hit me in the right way. We have a sequel to one of my favorite books of the year. And we have kind of a surprise book that was not on my original TBR that made me cry in the best possible way, and I'm so excited to talk about it. Before we get started, let's go ahead with our question of the week. And my question of the week this week is, what is a series where the second book improved on the first book for you? So I want to hear a series that didn't peak with book 1. I want to hear a series that keeps getting better as you go along. And I will share my answer with you at the end of the video. So be thinking about your answer and let's go ahead and get started. So let's go ahead and get started with what I read this week. I do have 3 books for you, and I'm so excited to talk about all of them. And we are going to start with the book that won the poll on my community tab last week. I asked you all to choose what book you would like to see me read this week, and you chose, in a landslide, Daughter of the Otherworld by Shauna Lawless. This is the sequel trilogy to the Gale Song trilogy. The first book of that trilogy is The Children of Gods and Fighting Men. That is a 5-star series for me. Every single book in that trilogy got 5 stars. And it is a series that takes place in Irish history, and it has to do with real Irish historical figures, as well as these kind of 2 different sets of mythological supernatural beings that are also from actual Irish history. Something I didn't know a lot about before I started reading these books, and I have just fallen in love. These are books that I would describe as being very much in the vein of a Game of Thrones, if Game of Thrones were set in our own world. So more of like a low fantasy Game of Thrones, but they are extremely political. So if you like a political fantasy, then the series that precedes this, as well as this new book, are going to be something that I think is going to hit really hard for you. Now, in this one, we are following a new generation of characters from that first book. It takes place, I think, about 120 years later. And I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil anything that happens in that first trilogy for you. We are following a character named Isolde. She is the daughter of the Otherworld. I won't explain what that means because you'll need to read that first trilogy. And that brings me to my first point, which is if you have not read the Gale Song trilogy, you will need to start there. I don't see any possible way that you could start with this series and not just be really confused. There are a lot of characters that carry over. I won't say which ones because, again, I think that's a spoiler for the first trilogy. But there are some characters from the first series who are also in this book because, remember, kind of immortal beings, not really immortal, but very long-lived beings. So some of them are going to be in this book as well, and it would be a spoiler to tell you who they are, but you are following some of the same characters as well as new characters in a slightly different time period in Irish history. And I would say that this book in particular is very much a book that is setting up what is going to happen in the rest of this trilogy. The pieces are moving around on the chessboard. We are meeting a lot of historical figures, Irish kings, names that are kind of similar. I do appreciate the fact that this book has a really extensive listing of the characters that are within the book in it because there were plenty of times that I got confused about who exactly this person was, although I think that's okay because they're real historical figures, a lot of them. And I mean, not as though Shauna Lawless could help that they have similar sounding names. So I did really, really enjoy this. It is going to land at a 4-star rating for me. I'll go ahead and give my rating for it. I didn't like it quite as much as the first trilogy, but as I said, it does feel like a book that is setting things up. So I think if you go into it with that expectation, the ending of this book was absolutely fantastic and totally made all the setup worth it and made me so excited to read the next book in the series when it does come out. So I would highly recommend, obviously, the original series and then continuing on to this one. I'm just so glad to be back in this world with these characters. This is a pretty intense series. It has a lot of emotional depth to it. It has a lot of violence, so do be aware of that. It is set in, history when there was a lot of actual violence going on, but I just had a really good time with it and I would recommend it. And I'm glad that you all told me to start my month with this. The next book that I picked up was, in fact, a sequel. kind of another sequel if you consider Daughter of the Otherworld to be a sequel, which I kind of do. So this is The Nameless Land, and it is the sequel to The Witch Roads. It finishes out this duology, which is written by Kate Elliott, an author who I had not read at all before I read these two books, and I am now an enormous fan. So if you have any recommendations for me of any other books that Kate Elliott has written or series that you would recommend, I would love to hear that because I just enjoyed this series so very, very much. In this series, we are following Ellen, and she is a courier who travels the witch roads. The witch roads are roads that are somehow, we don't know how, safe from the kind of like fungus, like spore, like bad things that live near the road in some parts of this world. So this is kind of a medieval styled fantasy world, but it is not our world. It is completely different. And as I said, we're following Ellen, and we are also following her nephew, Kim, who has just become a warden of the land. And in the first book, we follow her as she manages to get them attached to the prince's party. And the prince, against her advice, goes into a mysterious tower and comes out different from how he went into it. And that's the setup for the first book in this series. I loved the first book. I thought it was so fantastic. I enjoyed the characters. I enjoyed the very kind of traditional feeling fantasy-ness of this, if that makes any sense to you. The characters themselves were quite good. I thought that Ellen was a really, really great character to follow. She can be a little bit frustrating sometimes, as she does have a past and a history, and she tries very hard to protect herself and her nephew from people who might encroach upon them. But I loved her. And the second book starts exactly where the first book ends. And this is, as I said, a duology. So if you're going to read these two books, I actually might recommend that you just read them as one long book. Because when I started the second book, I actually had to think, wait, what happened at the very, very end of the first book? Because it just picks right up as though there was no break. So, and I had forgotten a few things, even though I only read this in June. So I had to do a little bit of a refresher. And I will say that both of these books are a little bit slow to get started into the action for me. I think it probably took me to about 15% of both of them to really feel like I was hooked in. But once I was, I could not stop reading. I loved everything about the world and the characters, and I may have cried a few times. And she did have a very nice conclusion. It ended kind of the way that I wanted it to, but she also left the world very, very open. There are things that our characters could still do, tasks that they had not completed. So I really do hope that she is going to return to this world and write more books in this world, because I love it and really want more from these characters. I can think of some side characters who we could follow. We could follow the nephew, her nephew Kem, for an entire duology or trilogy, and I would be very happy with that. I just really enjoyed this. And if you like traditional style fantasy, I think you would like this. It is an on the road story, so you have to like a travel story. And I generally do not like a travel story. That is not my thing. But this one really worked for me for some reason, and I'm so glad I read it. This second book just came out, so it is complete. So you can pick up the first book now and start it and be able to finish the story. And I highly recommend that you do, because I thought this was just fantastic. And now we are to the third book that I finished this week. And this book was not on my original November TBR, and I did complete it in 24 hours if you want to have an idea of how much I enjoyed it. And that book is going to be Kill the Beast by Sarah Swift. And I'm going to give you this cover, give you a cover close-up, because I think this is such a gorgeous cover. I mean, it's one of the prettiest covers I think that I have seen this year. I got this in my Aardvark box. I'll show you the other stuff that I got in a few minutes, and immediately had to read it because it just felt like the kind of thing that I was in the mood for. So this is the story of Lisa, I'm not sure which one, and she's a monster hunter. She has spent her entire life trying to get revenge on the creatures, the fairy-created creatures in this world who murdered her brother. And she is also on a quest as she goes after these creatures to kill the creature that actually is the one that attacked her brother. And one day she gets a request from a man named Aldrich that he will pay her to murder this monster. And not only that, but he knows where it can be found, which is something she does not know. And of course, she's not sure that she really wants to deal with him because he is a ridiculous, flamboyant person, but she decides that the money will be worth it. And so she takes on the job, and we go from there. The comp titles for this book, I don't know if you all remember when I was talking about this book, I think last week, I said that I was not sure because the two comp titles for this are number 1, The Witcher, and number 2, Howl's Moving Castle. And I was like, those books are not like one another, but you know what? I would say that this book has done it. It has combined those two things because Lisa is very much a Witcher-like character. She's a monster hunter. She's a monster hunter, and she is a monster hunter who does it for revenge. She does it because she feels like these monsters need to die. And then we also have Aldrich, who is, of course, the Howl-like character. He dresses in flamboyant clothing. He's very kind. He really annoys Lisa, I would say. And if you are thinking to yourself, is this a romantasy? The answer is no. And that's going to get into one of the things that I loved so much about this book is that it is the story of a platonic friendship between these two characters, between a man and a woman who fall in love, but not in a romantic way. And I cannot tell you how refreshing it is to have a story about a close friendship like that doesn't have to be about a romance because it was wonderful. There are some side characters in this that are also really fantastic. I finished it last night while I was sitting on the couch with my partner, Sean, who was reading a different book, and I was crying. I was crying so hard, and not like in a bad way, but because this book checked all of my cozy boxes. There are a lot of things about this book that are not cozy. Look up some trigger warnings if you have them, because there are definitely some darker, grittier things within here. But there were some things about the end of the book that just really, really tripped some of my personal, this is so heartwarming, I'm going to die kind of things. And I absolutely loved it. I just loved it. Was it perfect? No, but I don't care. I love these characters and I loved this book. And this is a debut novel and I am so impressed with it. And I am going to give it a really high recommendation. I'm going to tell you all that if what I have said sounds good, you like cozy, but it's got stakes and a plot. You like the idea of a platonic friendship really being like front and center in a book. You need to go read this. You need to go read it right now because I loved it so much. I loved it so much. And it was exactly what I was looking for. I'm so glad I picked it up and decided to give it a chance. I know one of you all actually recommended this to me, said it was one of your favorite books of the year in one of the comments on my video a couple of weeks ago. And you were so right. It was amazing. It was perfect for me. And highly, highly, highly recommend this one. All right, so now what am I currently reading? Well, I finished Kill the Beast last night, and that's a hard one to follow up for me. That's going to be tough. So I started one book, decided it was not the thing to follow that one up with. Started another book, and I'm still not quite sure that I'm settled in. So I did start, and I read 10% of the book Observer by Robert Lanza and Nancy Kress. This is a sci-fi thriller, also kind of a medical thriller, I would say. And I think it's going to be great. I have no complaints, but it did feel like it wasn't going to have an emotional connection with the characters. And also it was set in like Bermuda or maybe the Bahamas, something that starts with a B that's really warm. And we are getting snow tonight for the first time. And that was not it. I was like, I cannot read about a warm place while this is going on outside. If my video looks a little dark, it's because it is so dark outside right now. So I put this one down, but I'm going to pick it up again later. Definitely. I think I'm going to really enjoy it. It just may not be a November read for me. And then the one that I picked up after that, I do think I'm going to enjoy, and that is The Man Who Died 7 Times. And this is by Yasuhiko Nishizawa. And this is a translation of a Japanese time loop mystery, which I wasn't aware was a genre, but I'm very excited about it. So let me show you the cover first because I am obsessed again with this cover. This cover has so much going on and I love it. So this is the story of a teenage boy. I think he's 16 years old, and his entire life he has found himself trapped in these time loops. So what'll happen is a day will just start repeating for him, and it will repeat exactly 9 times. And he can do things that will change some things that happen within the loop, but otherwise everything happens exactly as it did. People say the exact same things. It's very Groundhog Day, right? And at the very beginning of the book, his grandfather has just been found murdered, and he is stuck in one of his time loops. And so we are going to find out how he's going to solve this or prevent it, or I'm not sure exactly, but it's it's a little bit cozy feeling just for being a locked room mystery, which of course is something I always really enjoy. And I did pick this one up pretty recently, and I am excited to get through it. It's pretty short. So I will definitely be back next week to tell you what I think about it. Let's see, what else am I going to be reading this week? I will be reading There Is No Anti-Mimetics Division by Quantum. I'm just going to assume that's how you say it. And it's coming out, the new version of this is coming out on Tuesday, and I'm hoping to get it from the library when it comes out so that I can read it and tell you all what I think about it. I'm very excited. Those of you who have already read it have been talking it up to me, and I am very into the idea of this sci-fi horror, kind of trippy, Doctor Who-esque story. So I'm very excited for that. That feels very appropriate. Other than that, other things that I'm thinking I might read, I have My Cousin Rachel from Daphne duMaurier. This feels very appropriate for the very cold weather that we are going to be getting here in the Midwest this week, in the snow. And then also, talking about snow, The Foxwife. So I think this one, snow on the cover, this could be a serious contender for this week. Those are both from my November TBR. And as always, it's possible I might just decide to read something else because I am just feeling all over the place right now, but I am feeling like I want some cozy things. So if you have any recent cozy reads that you would recommend to me, go ahead and let me know. I will be posting a video on Friday this week that is going to be my cozy book recommendations. So if you like the kind of cozy things that I like, where they have a plot, but they're still going to touch your heart, I think that you're going to want to look out for that video, and please give me your recommendations because I am looking for more, most definitely. So now we are on to books that I picked up this week. I do have a few. First of all, I mentioned that Kill the Beast came in my Aardvark box. I got 2 other books in that. The first one is a book that I have read. So I picked up this copy as an add-on to my box because I wanted a copy of it. And by the way, I left this book out of my wrap-up video, and I'm going to remind you all that I thought this book was fantastic. I gave it 4.5 stars, and that is The Autumn Springs Retirement Home Massacre by Philip Fracassi. This is it's not cozy, but it's a slasher story set in a retirement home that is somehow a little bit cozy and touching. I don't know. If you liked Thursday Murder Club and you also like horror books, this is just a no-brainer. I thought it was really, really good, and I was excited to pick up a copy. I enjoy Aardvark's copies of things because they're not, you know what I don't like about Book of the Month? I don't like that big Book of the Month logo on it, and Aardvark's are so subtle that it's there, but it's not gonna show on my shelf. So anyway, I picked this up, so I was excited for this. And then the other one that I got is one I don't know much about. It was a little bit of a cover buy because I like the cover and because I'm trying to read more horror novels, and that is The Place Where They Buried Your Heart by Christina Henry. I love this because it's one of those ones that's trying to look like it's aged, that it's an old book or something like that. This is a haunted house story, and it says, on an otherwise ordinary street in Chicago, there is a house, an abandoned house where, once upon a time, terrible things happened. The children who live on the block are told by their parents to stay away. But of course, children don't listen. Children think it's fun to be scared, to dare each other to go inside. Jessie Campolini did what many older sisters do and dared her little brother Paul. But unlike all the other kids who went inside that abandoned house, Paul didn't return. His friends said that the house ate Paul. course, adults didn't believe that because adults never believe what kids say. The disappearance of her little brother broke Jessie's family apart. She grew up, had a child of her own, and kept living on the same street where the house that ate her brother sat, crouched and waiting. And darkness seemed to spread out from that house, a darkness that was alive and hungry. So that sounds great. And I think I said last week that I've never read a book by this author, but that's not true because I did read Alice, which is kind of a horror retelling of Alice in Wonderland. I don't remember anything about it, but Goodreads tells me that I read it when it first came out and I gave it 3 stars. So I'm excited to read this one. And so that's what I got from Aardvark. I do like Aardvark. I don't order from them every month, just when they have things that I want, but this month they did. So a couple more books. I do have a book that I picked up because I gave it 5 stars, or roughly 5 stars, and I wanted a copy of it, and that is The Everlasting by Alex C. Harrow. So I did pick up the hardback version of this from my local indie bookstore, and I'm really excited to put that on my shelf. I think it's a gorgeous cover. I love it. I don't know. It's very pretty, and it has these pretty dark green, my favorite color, sprayed edges. Got a map on the inside, very nice pages. Very happy with this purchase. I do feel like this is a book I will probably reread, so nice to have it on my shelves. And then I have one piece of publisher mail. Titan Books sent me a copy of We Are Always Tender with Our Dead by Eric LaRocca. This is the first book in the Burnt Sparrow trilogy, and I will put that forward so you can see it. I like this cover. I think it's striking. I like the houses on there and the little like coffins. I don't know. I'm really excited to read this one. I have never read anything by this author at all, actually. So I'm excited to try this one out. It's very short and see how I feel about it. If you've read it, let me know what you thought, but I'm probably going to try this one out at some point soon. And then I have one more thing, which is not exactly a book, but I have the new reading journal that I picked up for this year. So I have been using just like a plain blank reading journal that I got from offline this year and filling in stuff myself. And I have enjoyed the process, but I have also struggled mostly with the process of setting up different spreads, with having to like draw straight lines and boxes. And I just have not enjoyed that. I enjoy the decorating. I enjoy the filling in. I don't enjoy the setup. So I am going in a different direction. And I picked up a reading journal from a company called Little Inklings. This is what the box looks like that they sent it in. They are a Canadian company, small business. And I love the way this journal looks. So I'm going to show you the cover so you can see that it's got a fantasy dragon theme here. And the inside of it, so it has a lot of different sections, a lot of spreads that are things that I would put in my reading journal anyway. It's even got like the bookshelves for you to fill in if you want to do your bookshelves. It's got bingo spaces, so I can put in my art fantasy challenge. It's got a lot of other reading challenges already in here. It's got the alphabet challenge that I always do. It has a series tracker that looks just like the one that I always draw that kind of looks like Tetris. And then some empty pages so you can put in your own stuff, the stuff that like maybe isn't in here, and then some really just like nice monthly spreads with some nice artwork at the beginning of each month, and then calendars within those. And then at the end, it's got room for individual book reviews that have a place for you to print out the cover and put it in there just like I like, and write a little review, but not a super long one because I do my long ones obviously here and then also on Goodreads when I remember to. I'm going to do a little video when I set this up and also talking about this and about my way I'm planning on tracking, the way I have been tracking books this year, because I have had a little bit of an evolution in the past year and how I've done that. So I am hoping that you all are going to find that useful, but I did pick up this journal and I'm pretty excited to get started with it. I looked at a lot of pre-made journals and a lot of them just didn't seem like something that was going to suit the way that I track things. And last time I checked, they did have some of these left. This is the undated one. You could start it whenever you wanted. If you're interested, no affiliation, just I think this looks like it's going to be really fun. I am so excited to get started with it. All right, now it's time to go back to that question of the week. And the question of the week was, what is a series where the second book made you love the world even more? Or something like that. Anyway, so let me give you my answer to that question. And mine is going to be the Shadow of the Leviathan series by Robert Jackson Bennett. The second book is A Drop of Corruption. This is the sequel to The Tainted Cup. And I thought that this book was actually even better than the first book. And the reason why I thought it was better is because the first book had to do so much heavy lifting in terms of the world building that was going on within this fantasy mystery series and setting up the relationship between our two detective and detective assistant characters and just kind of getting everything rolling that I felt like that really paid off in this book, where we expanded the world and we expanded what we knew about the characters. And it just felt like things were getting better and richer and bigger in the best possible way. So that's going to be mine for this. Please leave me yours. Let me know what series are the series that just kept getting better for you, because I have read too many series that peaked at book one, and I'm always afraid of that happening. So please let me know which ones you thought kept getting better. So go ahead and leave me your answer to that question of the week, or just let me know what you've been reading this week. I would love to chat about the books that you have been enjoying and the ones you've not been enjoying quite as much. And if you're feeling quiet, go ahead and leave me the moon emoji, because it just feels right with my favorite book of the week, which of course was Kill the Beast. And I hope that you all have a fantastic day. I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.